Good evening, everybody. This will be quick. My name is Joshua Levy. I'm a member of the board of Discovering Justice, and this is just a phenomenal. That's my mom and dad over there. They're clapping. It's an incredible sight to see this room so full of people, record-breaking attendance. It's really a testament to this organization, the difference it's making in so many communities. I got involved with Discovering Justice when this building opened in 1998, and I was a young federal prosecutor upstairs, and I taught the trial class for Discovering Justice, and I've been involved ever since because I see, kid by kid, the difference it makes. It's a great organization. I left here, I went over to Ropes and Gray, and I had the privilege of being a partner there and being a partner with Diane Patrick, someone who I admire tremendously on a personal and professional level. And Rachel and I are very fortunate to count Deval and Diane as our friends. I'm not going to have time in the few minutes I've been allotted to talk about the great Diane Patrick and introduce her to cover what she is like a lawyer. She recently retired from Ropes and Gray. I had a chance to see the client testimonials, and they were phenomenal. They talked about her tireless work ethic, her dedication to her clients, her kindness, her touch. Even one of her clients named Diane her godparent for her kids. I'm lucky to get my clients to return my calls, so I'm doing something wrong. But there's a few things I want to talk about with Diane Patrick, what makes her such a special person. I want to talk about the person, not the lawyer. First of all, when you meet Diane, you soon see that Diane makes everybody she encounters feel worthwhile and feel important. When she retired from Ropes and Gray, we didn't have a party at the Ritz or the Four Seasons. We had it in a conference room at Ropes and Gray. And the reason we did is because Diane wanted the people who make that big institution hum, the people in the cafeteria, in the mailroom, the people who answer the phones. She wanted them to be able to be at that party. And let me tell you, they wanted to be at that party too. Diane knows their name, they know Diane, and that's just who Diane Patrick is. Second, Diane has left an incredible legacy of giving back to the community. She's been on 10 different nonprofit boards during her time as a lawyer in Boston, and Diane makes every ecosystem she's a part of a better place by being thoughtful and being kind and being a role model. And on a personal level, Diane's heard me say this before, she's the kind of person that nurtures you and challenges you in your interactions with her. You run into Diane Patrick in the cafeteria, she always remembers something going on in your life. She asks you something about your kids or one of your cases, and she makes you feel special and valued. And she has this very subtle and elegant way of also challenging you to do a little bit more, to try and be a better person, be a better lawyer, be a better partner at the firm. She's always pushing people in a very understated way to be the best they can be. And she doesn't just do it on a small scale. She does it on a macro scale too. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about Diane and the contribution she made to Ropes and Gray. We are very proud at Ropes and Gray of our accomplishments in the area of diversity. We've won a lot of accolades, and we have a lot to be proud of, and Diane really led those efforts. But Diane challenged the firm in that area too. We had a partner retreat a few years ago, and Diane got up and she talked about diversity at the firm. And without any notes and without any pauses, she gave a very compelling, fact-based presentation about how we were doing well, but we weren't doing enough. And she focused on the fact that young professionals of color in professional services firms, Ropes and Gray, other law firms, other professional service firms, have a harder time getting traction, harder time making the connections, the networking that helps you build a career. And she challenged the partners in the room that day to do a better job, but she did it in a way I wish I had filmed it, because it was pure leadership. No one left that room feeling dejected, feeling demoralized. They felt energized, and they went up to Diane, person after person, what can I do, what can I do? That's the kind of legacy she's left at Ropes and Gray. And when she retired, the firm wanted to honor Diane, and the way we decided to do it was we created a fund called the Diane Patrick Attorney Advancement Fund. It's a $25,000 a year fund that's for attorneys of color, diverse attorneys, to pay for things to help them get going in their career, whether it's attending conferences, networking, maybe joining a trial team that doesn't have the funds to take on another lawyer. You want to give someone that experience, assignments at a client on a secondment, various options to help attorneys get that traction early in their career so our partnership someday looks like the communities that we all live in. And we have a long way to go on that. So that's Diane's legacy there. So it's great that Diane Patrick is getting the award from Discovering Justice, but I suggest if you want to discover justice on a personal level, get in her orbit, spend time with Diane Patrick. Diane, congratulations.
Thank you, Josh, Rachel. On behalf of Josh, Rachel, Stacy, myself, Kate, Ben, the host committee, we appreciate you coming here this evening. I also want to thank Josh and Amy Boger for their generosity this evening. Probably should tell you all, I actually am the first recipient of the Diane Patrick Ropes and Gray Fund. That's not true, by the way. That is not true. That is not true. But if there's $25,000 in it, I'm all in. Stacy and I are thrilled to have the privilege and honor of introducing truly a man who needs no introduction, who is known to everyone in this room for all his success and reward in his personal and professional life. Many of us in the room, frankly, are the beneficiaries of his grace, his guidance, and his leadership. All of us who live in this Commonwealth enjoyed the privilege of living under his benevolent reign for 8 years when he was in the corner office. But those experiences, those titles do not define the man and frankly do not dictate why we are here tonight to give honor to Deval Patrick, the other half of the dynamic duo that is Diane and Deval Patrick. To most of us, he has become a guiding light, a mentor, and a life leader, someone who every day and every walk of his life has embodied the spirit of justice and leadership. Long before most of us knew him, coming from the south side of Chicago, seeking an opportunity, he was told by his parents and grandparents that he was someone he was empowered without regard for his current circumstances. He's here tonight with his siblings and his family, and we're grateful for them to join us this evening. How about a round of applause for them? At every step of his journey, Deval knew and understood that he had power regardless of the circumstances in which he found himself, and it was in that power where he discovered his true sense of justice. Because justice truly defined is using one's power to ensure fairness and equality all along one's way. Lessons he learned on the south side of Chicago from his mother and his grandmother that he carried to Milton Academy, where he learned it even more, to Harvard. So much so that he left Harvard to go to Africa, to give of himself to sacrifice for those with a greater need. And it was there that he decided to go to law school and pursue justice truly as a lawyer, as an advocate, as someone who recognized that in himself he had power and was committed to use that power for the greater good. For those of us who've come to know him over the span of our life and career, we have greatly benefited from that because in every way and every walk of his life, he reminded us that we too were empowered. When he was in public office every day, those of us who had the privilege to work and serve with him, he reminded us that our power was in helping the people and to ensure that they understood their own power and to help them gain and be the best they could be, and that the power of government, frankly, and justice was to help the people achieve their own dreams and aspirations. He did not berate us about this. He did not beat us over the head about this. He did not proselytize about this. He lived it, he walked it, and in so doing, he taught all of us. And he reminded us that at our very best, we are here, we exist for the greater good, and that our truest exhibit of our true power is in helping everyone else achieve their own dreams and aspirations. That is the legacy of his time in public office. That is the legacy of his life's work. And that is the partnership in which he's been in with so many loving years with Diane Patrick. And it is the reason why we are here this evening, to celebrate them both, to honor their commitment to justice, their commitment to recognizing and acknowledging that we all are empowered, and it is our duty and obligation in the spirit of justice to be our better selves and to help lift others up and to help them achieve their own dreams and aspirations. Because that is who we are, that is the best sense of community, and that is why tonight we honor these titans of justice. So without further ado, it is our distinct honor to bring to the podium and welcome our 2017 honorees, Diane and Deval Patrick.
Thank you, Mo and Stacy and Josh and Rachel, and where are my notes? Here we are. I can't tell you how humbled I am to be standing here and receiving this award from Discovering Justice. And I just want to thank John Spack and the whole Discovering Justice organization and all of the co-chairs and the people who helped put this together, including my nephew right there, Brandon Sy, who decorated the room. Everybody had a little piece of the action here, and I want to thank you. I'm especially humbled because I'm being honored on the same stage with a man who happens to be my husband of 33 years come this Friday, who's, I think as Mo said very well, whose entire life has been dedicated to the pursuit of justice. Whether it's in courtrooms or boardrooms or federal or state house conference rooms or living rooms of simple folk who are seeking justice or just seeking to be heard. Deval has stood for justice in every step he has taken, every action he's taken, every position he's held, and in almost every word that he's spoken. I'm very proud of the work that Deval has done, and I am proud to be standing with him here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, many of you know me as a lawyer. Some of you know me as the former First Lady. Deval, help me, please. Thank you, I need my glasses. Some of you know me as the former First Lady of Massachusetts. And some may know of my advocacy in the area of domestic violence and in efforts to erase the stigma of mental illness. But aside from my family and oldest friends, most of you don't know me as a public school teacher I was in New York City, working with young children, trying to inspire their curiosity, stimulate their minds, and create lifelong learners. Working with young people and watching them mature into responsible and concerned, dynamic young adults who use their gifts to contribute to the betterment of others was my very first aspiration, and it remains my lasting goal. I've never given up on that ambition, and I continue to work to achieve that goal. And this is why Discovering Justice so resonates with me. Discovering Justice concentrates in part on focusing young people on the power of their own voices. That focus is so critical. It's a lesson I learned as a newly minted teacher in New York City. And I want to tell you a brief story about a little boy in one of my classes who had a major impact on my life and my own sense of justice, or rather, my sense of injustice. As a new teacher in the New York City school system, and by the way, Deborah, where are you? I was teaching at the same time your mother was teaching in the New York City public school system, and you're right, it was a different time. As a new teacher, I would be assigned each year to the worst schools in the system, the kind of schools that the most senior teachers couldn't wait to get out of. This was a time 40 years ago when students were still tracked in classes, going from classes filled with children who were perceived as intellectually full and the brightest to those classes who were filled with children who were perceived as intellectually lacking. Inevitably, as a new teacher, I was assigned to the lowest class in the grade. So for example, the second grade classes were numbered, starting with 2-1, 2-2, 2-3. I ultimately, inevitably, would be assigned class 215. Now, these classes were not full of stupid children, though many thought they were, and they labeled them as such. They were full of children with special needs, mental, emotional, social needs, needs that were not being met by their schools, by their communities, or by their families. The children in these lower classes were simply being put in classrooms, crowded classrooms of 30 to 40 children with other children the system had given up on. These children should have been assigned the best, the most experienced teachers, not people like me, fresh out of college with no experience in dealing with that population. But that's the way the school assignments worked back then. In my second year of teaching, I was assigned to a school in South Jamaica, a depressed neighborhood, and I was assigned class 2 something in the teens. My students were second graders, but most had been held back at least once. There was one little boy, Tyrone was his name. He had been held back twice, so he was 9, almost 10 in the second grade. And Tyrone was incorrigible. He was angry, he was defiant, he was determined to be miserable and to make everyone around him more miserable than he. He didn't do his work in class or outside of class, and he was a disruption. And he didn't seem to care one bit. And his parents didn't seem to care either. They never showed up for parents' night, they never signed his report cards, and he didn't have a home phone number for me to call when I needed to speak with someone about his work or his behavior. Now, because my entire class was a challenge and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to cope, I came up with an idea of rearranging the desks that were all lined up in neat, straight rows, to grouping the desks into clusters. Now, I know that happens a lot now, but believe me, back then, 40 years ago, that was a novel idea. And I set up a bit of a contest in these clusters. Children were rewarded with points for their homework, for their behavior, for their cleanliness, for their respect for others. And then the clusters would compete for points, and each week the cluster with the highest number of points would be taken by me to McDonald's for lunch. Now, I know that's not a healthy prize, but McDonald's was new at the time and it seemed an attractive enticement, something that kids would work hard for, so that's what I did. And wondrously, it seemed to work. The children had something to motivate them, and mostly they worked hard for their rewards. All except Tyrone. Nothing seemed to work with Tyrone. I tried everything. I threatened him with staying after school. He loved it. I sent notes home to his parents, and I never heard anything back. I took away his liberties, like going to gym or art or music, and told him he had to stay in the classroom with me. He loved that too. And no one wanted Tyrone in their cluster. They knew with Tyrone that they'd never win a trip to McDonald's. So I decided to rotate Tyrone among the groups, but that just exacerbated the problem for him and for everyone else. He seemed to become a curse. No one wanted them in his cluster. So finally I came up with an idea. Tyrone would get his own table, right next to my desk. He was going to be responsible for himself, for his own work, for his own cleanliness, for his own behavior. And for me, he got his own attention and his own praise. And somehow the thought that he alone might win the prize of lunch at McDonald's with me seemed to inspire him, gave him a sense of purpose. So Tyrone began to earn his points. He began to behave and straighten up. And one week, Tyrone won the lunch. He was proud, and so was I. So we went to lunch and we talked, and I told him I wanted to tell his parents how proud I was of him, of his great progress. Tyrone wasn't thrilled with that idea. He said he didn't want me to. I didn't understand, and I pushed back, and he resisted. I said it was really important for his parents to know of his accomplishments, and he shrugged it off. I finally insisted one afternoon that I was going to walk him home, and I did. What I saw when I walked him home stunned me. Home was a truck in which he and his father lived. His father sold fish from the back of the truck by day, and they lived in the truck at night. There was no mother. Tyrone was ashamed. But I too was ashamed. I was ashamed of myself for not seeing this boy's needs and causing him to reveal his needs to me so starkly. I learned a lot that day. I learned a lot about Tyrone and about myself and about the community in which he lived. And I learned just how little I understood the community in which I was working. I learned how little prepared I was to know what to do in this situation and how helpless I felt. I learned how little support the school seemed at the time to be able to offer the children in this community. I learned of the injustice of the school system in which Tyrone and so many others like him were condemned. And I learned that this 9-year-old was in tremendous need. Tyrone and his father needed a great deal of help. Tyrone needed a safe and stable home. He needed nutritious meals and probably medical attention. He needed evaluation of and treatment for his behavioral problems. He needed guidance in understanding how to resolve conflicts. His father needed some intervention to help him meet his obligations to his son. Tyrone needed a boost in his confidence and self-esteem. He needed to know that he mattered to someone. He needed not to be given up on. He needed a voice, his or someone else's, to speak for him. I think about Tyrone all the time, and I wonder where he is today. I wonder whether a Discovering Justice program, if it existed at the time, might have inspired someone, a student, a teacher, a parent, a volunteer, to recognize that something was not right and to speak up in Tyrone's behalf. I wonder how many students Discovering Justice has empowered to speak for themselves. And I wonder how many students that are empowered by Discovering Justice go on to advocate and ensure that children like Tyrone never have to feel alone, never have to hide their circumstances, never give up on themselves because it feels like everyone else has. So I want to thank Discovering Justice for honoring me tonight, but more importantly, for honoring our future by dedicating its resources and its energies to introducing the simple but powerful concept of justice to a generation of youngsters who now more than ever are going to need it. Thank you.
The reason I don't have notes is because I had a feeling that having followed Diane to microphones in the past, that it would be easier for me, if not also for you, if I just said what she said. The champion of justice in our family, in our home, for 34, if you count the time before we actually married, has been Diane. And she brings and has brought that same both feet on the ground, I see you way to our lives as she has to yours in the Commonwealth. And I'm just so proud that you chose me way back when you did. Thank you. I want to thank Mo and Stacy and Josh and Rachel for those beautiful eulogies. I want to really extraordinary. I want to thank the chairs and co-chairs and honorary chairs and committee members and sponsors and supporters, and by name my colleagues from Bain Capital for stepping up and supporting Discovering Justice and this beautiful evening. Diane's pointing, saying, mention ropes and gray. This is my turn. Also ropes and gray. I want to thank Jim for his leadership, for his patience, and I say this in a very personal way, with a new and nervous and awkward and clumsy candidate about 14 or 15 years ago. And the willingness to have me back and to challenge me and to do your very best to keep me centered by doing your job as well and with as much integrity as you do. And it is not true, Jim, that I would say that you were always wrong, but never in doubt. I said you were often wrong, or sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. But I thank you for your service and for your friendship and for helping tonight. I want to thank John and the Board of Discovering Justice and all of the team who are honoring us tonight for this very, very special and meaningful honor and this really terrific night. We thank you, both of us, Diane and I, from the bottom of our hearts. And of course, everyone we know is here, so we want to thank you for coming. It's a special thing to be honored by Discovering Justice. I have to tell you, it's also a special time to be honored by Discovering Justice. Because a lot of us have been worried over the last 100+ days. The reasons to worry, to me, have been around a lot longer than that. Because the truth is that for a long time, we have been treating our democracy as if it could sustain unlimited abuse without breaking. For decades, we've belittled government and the people who serve in it or who seek office to do so. We've demeaned the judiciary and the lawyers who make it work and the judges, many of whom are here, who still believe that the rule of law is the defining and central feature of a successful democracy. We now attack the press. And some of you who worked with me in the governor's office will know sometimes we did that privately. But the notion that we call into question whether an active and engaged and challenging press has a role is a part of a pattern, and a dangerous one, of putting our democracy at risk. I've been thinking a lot lately about how much of what makes a democracy succeed are actually unwritten rules, understandings around decorum and restraint and respect and empathy and grace and justice. This ephemeral idea, the quintessential example of something that you know it when you see it. And so, yes, we all ought to think again about how to rediscover justice. I am really, really glad you are all here. I know John and his team and all of those who worked really hard to make tonight happen are glad that you are all here. But I want to ask you one more time to dig deep and discover justice. I want to ask you to reconsider your contributions to this program. But I also want to ask you to reconsider your behavior as a citizen. Because my team will know that I often say, we get the government we deserve. And if we want better government, if we want more successful democracy, we have to be personally responsible for bringing the kind of behavior and example to our own lives, to our own families and communities, to our workplaces that makes a successful democracy sing. Discover justice in that way, and we'll be all right in the end. Thank you so much for having me.